Science has no frontiers. We should work in science to improve health all over the world. Of course, HIV for me was not only a discovery of the virus, but also what we can do for humanity, for population all over the world.
Of all the laureates here, I believe there are only 3 women, and one is actually Francoise Barré-Sinoussi, to discover the link between HIV and AIDS.
We will have to face a global scale epidemic. For 2 patients starting treatment, there is 5 new cases of infection, and still there is 2.7 million new cases of infection per year. Today we are...
I'm very inspired personally by her career, how she manages to juggle her personal life and her career as a woman, how she has managed to overcome a lot of the stigmas that are associated with her research. The work that you did was done in a climate that was somewhat controversial because, at least in the United States, HIV/AIDS appeared first in the homosexual population.
Still today that remains. From time to time when I'm taking a taxi in France or in other countries, you know how taxi drivers are, they ask, what are you working on, and so on. And I say, I'm working on HIV/AIDS. And they say, you cannot be interested in other disease, and instead of spending your time and spending money on those people.
Yeah. But those people include the taxi driver, because nobody is not at risk for HIV/AIDS.
I agree with you, and it's exactly what I said.
Right.
They don't believe me still.
Right.
And I finished by saying, look, it's by this kind of behavior or reaction that you have that the infection is spreading.
Right, and what about the information that is sometimes misconstrued, especially in third world nations where people don't even know that by being exposed to certain body fluids you can or cannot get AIDS, or different hypotheses on how to cure AIDS or prevent AIDS? How do you approach those topics?
Education. Let's take the case of Uganda. It has been clearly shown that when the local community started to be involved, after a while we saw the prevalence of infection reduced by 50%. So we know it can work. My approach personally, when I go for the first time in a country, it's just to listen, to talk with communities, even to go to the markets, you know, and meet the population, and just try to understand.
So you're saying that basically there won't be one solution for everybody.
Exactly, and I don't know how you feel, but even in our own country, there is diverse situation. In Washington, D.C., for example, the prevalence of infection is very high, 3%.
It's ironic, isn't it, that the nation's capital
more than in Senegal
would have one of the highest infection rates, right?
Yeah.
And it's supposed to be the heart of the country.
How you explain this kind of situation?
I don't know how I would explain it, but growing up in Canada myself, one of the biggest culture shocks I saw was moving to a country where universal health care was not available to everybody.
Exactly.
And I think that's also very expensive, because people not only lack access to treatment, but they lack access to information. And in the end, that hurts us, because you have more cases of, for example, HIV/AIDS in populations that don't have access to health care. And in turn, that makes our country a more dangerous place to live.
More vulnerable, yeah.
I'm also Bolivian, which is a developing nation.
Sure.
And I gave a scientific talk there a few years ago. But also that's a population that's very religious. And so how would you approach talking about HIV/AIDS, condom use, safe sex in a population that's supposedly doesn't ever have sex outside of a monogamous marriage.
My advice is to start to have exchanges and discussion with the younger generation, because they are the future. And it's through them that we can change the situation.
And you wrote a letter, right, to the Pope?
That's right.
What was the content of that letter? What motivated you to do something like that?
The Pope make a statement saying that condoms were not efficient to prevent against HIV. We have to stop this kind of statement. I mean, it's criminal. He is destroying in few minutes all the work done by others.
What about abstinence-only education and the types of influences that has on the spread of HIV/AIDS?
I mean, this is not serious, really.
Yeah.
Do you think really that it's possible for a whole life to follow abstinence? It's okay for a while, but
Right, I just don't think that it's logical.
the day of my wedding, I was in the lab. I received a phone call from who became my husband at 11:30 in the morning saying, "Do you think you will come?"
You mentioned that you were in the lab on your wedding day, and that your fiancé had to call you to remind you to go to the church. Do you think that that event symbolizes what your career has been like? You know, very science focused?
Totally.
What advice do you have for women who are trying to pursue careers in science in the midst of a, social climate that's still somewhat male dominated and where women still have roles that are expected to be fulfilled?
Select the right partner.
What if there aren't enough of those?
Because I think I selected the right partner because he had a lot of humor. And he was not surprised at all. He knew.
He knew to call your lab.
He knew the situation. He knew me very well. He knew where I was, of course.
Yeah.
And he knew that if he married me, all his life will be the same.
Have you faced discrimination for being a woman in a male-dominated field?
Yeah, especially in my youngest year, let's say.
Did you have role models that sort of helped push you along?
Few people have been models. What about you? Do you have models?
My mom's an engineer, and just the fact that she started in La Paz, Bolivia, and really had to work hard to get to where she is now is inspiration, because she started here and I'm starting here, so I have an obligation almost to pursue my dream, because it's almost like she did that for me.
My mother was not working. She was at home. And my father, it's among these kind of people, that think that women should stay at home.
Wow.
For me, it was a pressure. And certainly I told my father not so long ago, thank you very much, because of your behavior regarding women. I said to myself when I was young, I'm going to show you what a woman is capable to do.
That is amazing.
I showed you. However, I'm not a feminist myself. I think it's nice to go to equity in condition that we keep as a criteria excellencies. If we are just taking women because they are women, I'm not satisfied personally at all.
I agree, because that's the same as saying I won't take you because you're a man. I do see more women in science these days, yet Right now I'm the only female in my lab.
And you're the only female?
It's a physics lab.
Yes.
And so in general, some areas still do have a large discrepancy between males.
Is what I found out, yeah, because in biomedical research, it's the opposite somehow.
She was very personable and very open with the answers, especially about her personal life. And it was very inspiring to hear that she basically got to the point where she is on her own motivation.
Also, we talk about women in science, of course. Our own experience, her young experience compared to my old experience.
But also because the finances just aren't there. The country cannot support research.
Except if you have for young scientists like Maki in a special field, physics, where there is very few women, I would say just be persistent to show them that women in your field can be very successful. To do exactly what we are doing right now.
I think that once I go back to Illinois, back to my lab, Francoise's message will be one of motivation and one of really perseverance in my field, regardless of barriers. And I intend to think back on this conversation whenever I'm feeling disappointed about lab results or whenever I feel a little bit alone as a woman in science, and just try to persevere through those obstacles.